Thank you, Juliet, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This webinar will last about 40 minutes from a content point of view. And the thing we're going to talk about today is your current sales channels. They're probably not generating the same level of income or possibly have stopped completely. So what can you do? So today we're going to look at alternative ways of generating revenue and for your products and services. So there are four main parts to the agenda. I'll go through it now, and at the end of each part, I will pause. So if there are any questions, then please type those into the chat box. So this is the agenda. There'll be a final question answer session at the end, which I'll come back onto camera and answer those. So we'll go through each section in detail. The first thing I want to talk about is what I'm calling the change game. So we're in an unusual position at the moment. The pandemic has changed the accepted normal. Life is in lockdown. Many staff are working remotely, staff are furloughed, and traditional business models have changed. And so what can we do about it now and for the future? The first thing is, it's about you as owners of businesses or about you as a member of staff within a business. Are you ready for change? Are the members of staff within your business ready for change? Are you ready to accept that there will be a new business model and there will be a new way of working? So the big question is, what's going to be the new normal? What's the new normal going to look like? And how do you do business in this new world? The answer is simple. It's adapt and innovate. And that's what I want to talk to you today about, adapting and innovating the way that you do sales. First, I just want to talk about this. This is the transition curve. If there is any change in our personal lives or in our business lives, this curve is very relevant. I just want to spend a couple of minutes explaining what this means. So it's divided into four quadrants, and in the top left quadrant, when something happens, we initially go into denial. We don't accept that this is happening and that we've lost all our sales, all our orders have gone. We don't accept it. And then the next stage is we are very resistant to that, and we feel confused and we feel angry that this has happened. And we're really at the bottom of the curve. The next stage is about acceptance, accepting that this has happened, and actually, nothing's going to change unless I make it change. And it's about exploring what are the next moves. And the final stage is commitment. It's a feeling of hope and a return of energy. Because in some way you've thought about what you're going to do and you have a plan. And I suppose today I want to talk about that transition between exploration and commitment. And the thing is that with denial, we need information. When we're in that point, resistance, we need support. When we're in exploration, we need to focus, and that's what I want to try and help you do today, and obviously encourage you and there's room for questions, and we can talk. If we need to talk on a one-to-one basis afterwards, we can certainly do that. So the first thing is to understand why buyers buy. Why do they buy your products? Buying is an emotional action based on two influencing factors. The first one is need. So it's the need to buy. The need tends to be I need to replace something that's broken, or I need to buy something to help me do a specific task. And the second thing is about want. It's I've seen something, I'm attracted to it, I want to buy it. It's about rewarding yourself. It's about, oh, I've got some spare money, I'll buy that. You don't necessarily need it, but you want it. And those are the two emotions that determine whether people buy or not. So, but the emotion varies depending on the situation. When the need to buy tends to be a business-to-business transaction, and a want to buy tends to be a business-to-consumer transaction. So what we want to do now is we want to assess where you are. So we're going to look at your products. We're going to look at where you stand, and it's important that you understand what effect you have. So which of your clients' emotions do you fulfill with the products and the services that you sell? So what I'm saying is, in life, and this is an acronym because basically I've divided up, there are 4 categories of products or services, and I'd like you to think about where do you fit in 1 or 2 of these categories. So the first one I call living, the second is indulgent, the third is feel good, and the fourth is essential. Let me explain in greater detail. So your products or services will fall primarily into one of these categories. And if you understand where they do fall, then you are able to identify where the alternative sales channels could be. So there's so many products and services. So on the right hand side we have lots of services, and on the left we have products, and that's the type of things that we're going to be talking about. So what do you sell? Let's have a look at your products, and let me give you some examples. So if you sell products that fall into the living category, they may be leisure products or sports products. It's things that people will buy for their enjoyment, their leisure, etc. Indulgent tend to be the luxury items, and feel good tends to be clothes. If you're anything like me, whilst I've been stuck at home, I've been ordering clothes online, and essential is food and drink. Now, if we have a look at services, living could be personal trainers or organising events. Indulgent could be therapies, so it could be having a massage, going to yoga, going to a spa, etc. Feel good could be hairdressing or getting your nails done, and essential could be the trades and professionals. So, example, if you have a pipe that's burst, you need to get a plumber in to come and fix that, so that's essential. If we then look at who are your customers, and we'll divide these into business to business, trying to use the same categories. So if you're a company that you fall into the sort of the living products, you probably sell or organize sports events or leisure wear for gyms if you're doing B2B. Indulgent could be corporate rewards. So, you know, it could be nice nice crystal glasses. It could be organising corporate events. Feel good. You could be organising things, staff incentives, and essential are things like supply chain. So if you're in a supply chain and you're in a B2B situation, that's essential. If the person above you doesn't do their job, you can't do your job, and vice versa. If we look at B2C, we look at living. So living would be sports retail, possibly. Indulgent could be holidays, could be jewellery. Feeling good, as we've already said, clothes retail. And essential could be, I put supermarkets, but it could be food and drink. So it's worth looking at the products where you think your product fits, looking at who your customers are and where they sit within that, and marry them up. And it's important that you understand the psychology behind why people are buying your products, because it will help you analyze as we go forward, where can we look for alternative sales channels. So if we look at your current process, how do you get orders? Well, you may have a sales team, you may have had people on the road, you may have telesales, you may have online ordering, you may have manual ordering where people will come in and order something, you know, say in a furniture shop, or if you provided trophies, someone would come in and order a trophy and get you to engrave it. You may do your own delivery, or you may deliver by courier, or people would collect. If you look at the current sales channels, how do you sell? Are you going direct to business? Are you going through wholesalers and distributors? Are you using resellers? Or are you going direct to the consumer? So those tend to be your processes and your channels at the moment. So that's the end of part one. Juliet, are there any questions, please?
Thanks very much for that section, Stuart. Just having a look to see if you've got any questions coming through now. I can see there's one here from Keith, and he's saying, in the psychology of sales part, you said the emotion need apply to B2B transactions and want to B2C. Are there circumstances when this differs?
Yes, I did say generally the need is a B2B transaction and the want is a consumer transaction, but that's not 100%, because it could be, I did hear of a business that in their boardroom they wanted a screen. So there are many screens in boardrooms, but the thing was the MD was a fan of James Bond movies, and he wanted to press a button on the board table and have a screen come up in the middle of the table, which was hugely expensive to do, but he wanted it. There wasn't a need necessarily for that particular item.
Okay. Thanks for that. No, it looks like that's it for the questions for this part, Stuart.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on to part two. So we have a question poll for you, and I think Juliet's going to send that out and see how we go with that. What I'd like to know. Sorry?
Sorry, I was just saying, I'm just about to launch it for everybody now to see, and then if you want to just provide the intro.
Yeah, so the question is, I've been talking about your products and your customers and your current processes and channels as it stands now. as we go on to look at the next stage, I'd like to know how many of you have made changes to the way you sell your products and services within the past, say, 8 weeks. And it's really simple. Yes. A, if you've done totally, B, if you've made some changes, and C, if you've not made any changes at all. So I'll just give you a minute to complete that or so.
Please do it. Right, I think there's a couple more people that are still waiting for to vote there. Okay. Looks like that's everyone who's going to vote for it. So I've closed that now, and now I'm just going to share the results. So Stuart, I don't think it can see this screen, but I can share with you that 13% have said yes, they've totally made a change. 60% some changes, and 25% not at all.
Okay. So, okay, the first one was 13, is that correct?
13%, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, thank you for completing that poll. We'll, can I go back? Oh. How can I remove my picture? There we go. Julia, I seem to have my picture in the screen. Oh, there we go. I'll just switch that off for the moment. So we'll have a look at the second one. Pardon?
Just confirming, we can see this fine, okay.
Everything's okay, okay. So we're going to look at the second part. Which is, are you ready to adapt? Are your staff ready? Are you and your resources and processes adaptable? And my thing seems to have locked up. Oh, there we go. If yes, then you can create a new offer, a value proposition, but this will take some effort because, as we all know, there's no gain without pain. So let's have a look at. So what I've identified is what you need to identify is what you can do quickly, differently, and in some way inexpensively. How can you quickly change? So the first thing, there are 3 parts to this. The first thing is about review your product and service range. Is there something that you can do about repackaging? Can you repackage it? If you have been selling in bulk to the trade, to B2B, can you repackage into smaller packets that may be more acceptable to a consumer or to a different market? The second thing is obviously, are there new products that you can look at making, even in for a short term or not? The second is to review your internal resources and processes. So look at the labour, look at the machinery, the premises, look at the sales process, look at the delivery. Do you have your own transport, do you use couriers, or maybe volunteers could do things if you were doing something, you were trying to provide products or services to the community. And the third thing is look at your existing customer base and building on what we talked about in section 1, who are they and why do they build? Why do they buy? Beg your pardon. Why do they buy your products? And you could look at the customer base and you could widen this by looking at your own supply chain, or looking at related sectors, or looking at your customer's supply chain. So let me just give you an example of what I mean, looking at the bottom 3 points. So imagine if you are a metalwork company and you make metalwork which become frames for trailers. And so you normally supply these as individual parts. So if you look at your own supply, would it help your own supply if you were able to erect and into a frame and actually supply it as one item rather than someone having to rebuild it? Could that take pressure off someone else? Could that generate some additional income for you within your existing supply chain? Following on from that, let's look at related sectors. So is there a demand for metal framed containers? So rather than thinking of it as a frame for a trailer or like a type of horse box or anything, is there a demand for possibly a simple frame garden shed that could be introduced, maybe to DIY or nurseries or anything like that? So that's looking at a related sector. And the third thing is looking at the customer, your customer's sectors. So could you supply other parts as well as just the metal? Could you supply the wheels, the tarpaulin, the electrics? Could you supply a completed trailer? Would that be an option? So it's just looking at what you can do around those. You know your businesses much better than I do, and hopefully you're trying to pick up on what can be done and what can't be done. So when we look at adapt and innovate, it's what are you doing now, and actually your existing customers, what's their perception of you? What do they think you do? What do they think you sell? And who are you? Are they clear about everything you do? And actually by adapting and changing and coming up with a new way of working, it's looking at what can you do differently, and can you then create a new offer and explain that new offer, and can you create a new perception for you as a business? Would this affect the existing customer base, or actually would it bring new customers as well? So that's really looking at what you can do around adapting and innovating. And you know, you've got to look at some of the companies around that have innovated, and if we have a look at some of their sales messages, lots of companies, if we look at, you know, the supermarkets, you know, they are doing their online delivery has just gone through the roof. I think you're looking at in some places bookings 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead, and there's thousands and thousands of people doing that. So it's coming up with a message. It may be a new message about what you as a company do. So that's the end of part 2. Are there any questions for part 2, please, Julia?
Okay, thanks so much, Stuart. Firstly, Stuart, we do seem to have lost your webcam now, so I don't know if you can.
Right. Yes, sorry, I turned it off because I couldn't see my screen. It should be coming back on.
Great.
There you
Perfect.
go.
I've got one question in here for you, Stuart, and that question is from Andrea, and she's asking, if your business cannot go online, is there nothing you can do?
I think online is a quick solution if you can go online, but I know there are many businesses that can't go online, and it's actually looking at what can you do. And a lot of businesses tend to look local, because if they can't go online, can they get their message out quite locally and actually start looking at supplying the local environment, depending whether it's a product or a service.
Yeah, okay. That's the section.
Okay, the next thing is we do have a second poll, so let me just take off my, can you remove, remove myself, and we'll go on to the screen. And if Juliet launches the poll. So we've been talking about in part 2 about changes. So really, what changes have you made in your sales process or your sales channels? And there's 3 options there. Have you gone online? Have you started doing delivery? Have you started doing collection? Have you moved from B2B to B2C, or from B2C to B2B? So an indication of that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. I have launched the poll.
Thank you.
But I'm just wondering whether there's difficulty with people voting. At the moment, I've got no votes coming in. Just a second.
Hopefully people are thinking about it. Sadly, there's only one choice. You may have done 2 things, but with the poll, there's only one choice, I think. Okay,
right, yeah. Poll, yeah. Poll votes are coming in now. So, okay, I've got one listener online who said none of these options actually apply to them.
Okay.
So, thank you for sharing that with us.
If he could let us know what, if he has done something different, that would be good to know. If you could just jot that down on the chat, that would be great for later on.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, so I'll now go a couple more seconds to let the last few people vote, and then I'll bring that to a close. Okay, bringing that to a close now. And so sharing data from that poll. On this one, Stuart, we have got 33% have gone online.
Yeah.
33% have moved from B2B to B2C.
Okay.
And 33% have moved from B2C to B2B.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just having a look there. I think somebody's commented. Yeah, there's a couple of people. The lady who said earlier that none of these apply to her, they're actually starting up or restarting a small part of their business in medical infection prevention.
Okay.
Their cell contacts are doing Zoom, she's mentioned.
Right.
And another one is referring to being in the events industry, so looking at different ways to diversify. They've clicked online as we have just ensured we are upping our online presence to create awareness.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that's a third, 33% moving from B2B to B2C, and the same from B2C to B2B. So, okay. Well, thank you very much for taking part in that poll. That's interesting to know those facts, and maybe we can explore that a little bit later. So let me move on to section 3, which is about a new approach. So once you've decided what the new you looks like and what the new you does, and what your new offer is, you can now look at a new approach. Now, there are 3 internal variables that you can change, and we touched on this in section 2, and that is your products and services, your process, i.e. how you deliver those products and services, and who you sell those products and services to. So by adapting 1, 2, or all 3 of those variables, you can develop a new offer and a new approach to your sales. So there are 5 alternative approaches, and we will look at each one in detail. So this is the first one. Now, what I'm trying to do is trying to give you an example of a product and a service that I feel falls into this category, which hopefully will help you determine what you can do within your business. So the first one is if you have the same products, the same process, and the same channels. If you're doing nothing differently, then all you really do is hoping that you survive. That's all. And the examples I've thought of for this is from a product is car sales. So it did say, I think in April, car sales were down by 93%, which is not surprising because it's a very traditional method. You go into a showroom, you look at a car, you have a test drive, and then you buy the car. Well, quite clearly, that's not happening at the moment. Yes, you can buy cars online, but that's quite a small portion of people that do that. If we think of a service, just think of the airlines. You think of, British Airways, EasyJet, Ryanair. All these, their method, it's the same product. They fly people. It's the same process. It's to holiday makers, and no one's going on holiday. So effectively, there's really nothing they can do. And obviously, the airlines are announcing large redundancies. So they don't have any alternatives. So if we look at the second one, which is about different products. So by repackaging your offer, you may find new customers. So I'll give you an example of, I know of a bakery that was a B2B bakery. He supplied bread-based products to restaurants, pubs, schools, colleges, etc. Quite clearly, flick of a switch, he had no business. But immediately, when he thought the lockdown was coming, he decided to go online and start selling direct to the consumer. He had a full bakery, a full team of people. He had delivery vehicles. He got a website made within sort of 2 days, and he was up and running. And he has a minimum order, and you order one day, and it will be delivered within 2 days. And he is saying he's doing a roaring trade. His costs have gone up, but the fact is he's not furloughed any staff, and everybody is keeping busy. They've all got jobs, and he's still making some profit, not as much as he did before. If we look at the service industry, I know of an industrial cleaner. They go out, they clean offices, they clean car parks. They do a lot of the steam cleaning. So what they're now doing is they've now, because they can't do any offices, they're now offering to clean people's patios, driveways, and they can maintain social distancing. And that is not something that they will probably continue, but it helps keep people employed and it brings in some money. If we look at same products, different process, but the same channels, by altering the way you deliver your products and services. So, brewery. So, breweries who normally sell to pubs or to supermarkets are now doing direct delivery to consumers. So it's the same product, it's just a slightly different process, and it's the same channels, it's the same people that are buying it in the end, the consumer. So for example, Theakston's Brewery. My wife has just ordered some beer from Theakston's Brewery, and that will be delivered within the next 4 days. And there's no delivery charge, and that's great because I do like Theakston's beer, so that's perfect. If we look at service, I know of a yoga teacher who normally would do sessions in church halls and things like that. She is now doing yoga sessions online with her clients, and they are still paying their fee for the yoga to do with her. Another interesting one is a whiskey distillery that I read about called Bimber Distillery in London. And they do a lot of tours around their distillery. Well, quite clearly, they can't do tours. So they're now doing online tastings. And when someone books a virtual tour, they are sent a tasting kit and given a date as to when to join in. So they actually taste the whiskey online with other people on a virtual tour. Same products, same process, different channels. So this is looking at the alternative markets in the supply chain. So I know of a food importer, and they import products from Spain, Spanish wine, chorizo, ham, etc., etc. And previously, they have sold those to restaurants and pubs and things like that. Well, quite clearly, restaurants are closed. So again, a bit like the bakery, he decided to set something up online. And so it's the same products, he's doing the same process, he's just got a different channel. He's got consumers. If we look at service industry, tourism and hospitality, that is having a really tough time. I don't know if any of you are in that, but one of the things I was talking to someone, one of the things they're thinking about is, you know, as the lockdown eases, extended families will be able to get together. So it could be that you offer exclusive events or exclusive stays just for one extended family. So at least they can come away and they can be together. And that's one way of looking at, you know, a slightly different channel. And the last one is different products, different processes, and different channels. So by looking at an alternative use of the resources to fulfill a market demand, which probably will be in the short term. So if we look at products, manufacturers making a range of PPE. So examples of this are, obviously in the UK, we were hearing that Dyson, who normally make vacuum cleaners, were looking at how they could make ventilators. I understand Ford cars in America were also re-engineering and looking at providing ventilators as well. Other people, it doesn't have to be ventilators, but if you think of hand sanitizers, I've heard of a number of gin distilleries, and even Ricard in France, who make the Pernod, were making hand sanitizers because they're quite used to working with pure alcohol. And so it's a different product, it's a different process, and they're selling it to, you know, a different market, you know, be it retail shops or the NHS. So that is very much a different approach. So what I've tried to give you there are 5 different approaches by varying what you do internally and looking at what your own company can do, be it over the product, the process, or who you're selling to try and give you an idea to do some thought-provoking to help you identify, can I generate some additional income whilst we're still in a lockdown phase? And this is not without pain or risk. So if we just have a quick look at this chart and we look at number 1, bottom left, you know, that's selling your current product to your current market. So that's pretty pain-free. There's no problem there. If you go to number 2, where you're going to your current markets and you're selling a new current products and you're going to a new market, that's a little bit risky, but that's not too bad. If you go to number 3, where you're trying to sell a new product into a current market, yeah, that's probably a bit more painful. There's a bit more work to do. And then number 4 is sort of the high risk and the high pain one, whereas you're trying to sell a new market, a new product into a new market. So that's a bit more difficult. So the sales options, and quite a lot of you picked up on this, is that, you know, you can either sell B2B, B2C, or you can do a combination of both B2B and B2C. So that ends part 3, and I hope that has given you some thought around what you possibly can do with your resources. Let me switch my camera back on. There we go. It's coming. There we go. So, Juliet, do we have any questions, please?
Yeah, there is one here. If you change everything about the business, the products, processes and channels, you won't have the same business, will you?
True. You may not have the same business, or you will have the same business, just doing different things. And I think, you know, if you are in a fortunate position that you don't have to change, then that's great. But I think the whole point is about looking at, if what is not working currently for you, what can you do now that will actually help you generate enough money to survive through the lockdown, or even, you know, let's be positive about it, you may actually generate a new sales channel going forward. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next section.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stuart. I think that's it for this section. Thank you.
Okay, let me take me off, and then we'll go to the final section. And my computer's decided just to not work for a moment, so that's great. Okay, let me just there we go. Right. So let's have a look at the strategy, short or long-term strategy. And this is really what I was referring to. You need to decide on your strategy. You know, you need to decide, is it challenge versus reward, or effort versus risk? And actually, what are you after? Are you after a quick win? Are you after, you know, big jackpot, lots of money? Or are you prepared to try and go for high stakes where it's a bit more risky? And I think you need to look at what the opportunities are. So you need to assess the value and worth of each activity you're doing. That's both in turnover and profit terms. Be clear which activity is short or long term. If it's short term, you know, you may have a lower or higher turnover, lower or higher costs, or lower or higher profit. And the same for long term. You constantly need to review what you're doing, because we are in a phase of rapid change. And now is the time to be marketing your company and selling your products and services. Even if your sales are very low at the moment, you need to be telling people that you're here, you're surviving, you've still got products. They may not be able to buy at the moment, but when there's an opportunity, they will. So people need to know you're still alive and kicking, and that you are still active and trading. So what definition. So what do I mean about short and long term? Well, I would say any orders that you're going to get sort of within 3 months, I would class as short term. Any orders within medium is sort of between 6 and 12 months, and long term is over a year away before you get an order. And I think this is a fairly standard short, medium, long term assessment we use in sales. You may have your own. It's entirely up to you, whatever suits your business. But there are consequences. So let's have a look at those. So if PPE stops in the short term because there's oversupply, that might be okay for you because you may have only been doing it just to generate some revenue and have some work for your staff and you. But in the long term, PPE may continue. I was reading about a health trust in Northumberland who actually have set up their own sewing room, and they're actually making their own gowns and their own masks because they had difficulty in getting those. But the intention is that will carry on. And whilst at the moment they're using volunteers to do that, their intention is that they will set this up as a going concern, and they will continue to supply not only their own health authority, but other health authorities as well, all over the country, or Europe, or the world. So in the short term, B2C direct product deliveries may stop, and you may go back to B2B only. Well, that's fine if that's was your intention. Yeah, the bakery I talked about earlier, they're thinking that they actually may set up a different division, a B2C division, and once they go back, and it means that would mean he'd take on more staff, so he would generate more income and he would create more employment. Long term, the B2C direct product deliveries may continue in addition to the B2B. In the short term, online services stop, and all those that have gone online go back to sort of more manual work, less digital. But actually, is there not a reason for doing both? That you do online? Many shops have online as well as shops. B&Q, you can order online, you can have it delivered, you can do the click and collect. It's a multiple of things. Online retail increases because people like buying clothes, and maybe they won't want to go into shops. But in the long term, online will continue, and actually retail outlets will probably increase. I know of an audio company who have been previously online, and they have just before the lockout, they moved into their new city centre store. But sadly, they've not opened it yet, but that was their intention because they could see the benefit of having both a physical presence as well as an online presence. So it really depends on your sector, it really depends on the products that you do, but the fact is you have to make a decision on what you want to do and be absolutely clear if it is short term or long term. So if we have a look at that, what determines that make or break? Well, it's really simple. It's turnover, it's costs and profit. And, this is what you want. You want to increase your turnover, you want to have break even on your costs, you increase your profit. You don't want to have this where you have a reduction in your turnover, your costs go up and your profit goes down. That's absolutely no good. And if we go back to a very similar chart that we looked at earlier about potential versus challenge, you have your quick wins, you've got a greater potential heading for the jackpot. Actually, if you've got something that's a very low return and lots of effort, actually there's a big question mark, should you be doing that? And there are some businesses that will go for the big challenge because there's a big potential, and that's the high stakes. So, you know, you have to make a decision. But what we all want is sales benefits. We all want to see the graph going in a upward trajectory. So that concludes my webinar today. What I've tried to do is I've tried to give you as many examples as I can. I've tried to explain to you about understanding where your products fall, what emotionally why people buy your product, what options you have to look at internally, looking at, can you change your product, can you change your process, can you change your channel, to look at, be it in the short term or in the long term, to keep those sales coming in and you continuing to generate revenue. So that's the end of part 4 and question and answer. So thank you very much, and she'll come back online.
Okay, we've had one question come in for that section, and Anna is asking, if you are not selling anything, why should you still be marketing?
I think I said it. If you are going to continue to trade after the lockdown, people need to know you're still around. And the point of marketing is that you still have to keep your profile raised. You have to tell people what you're doing. You may be developing new products in this downtime, and you can tell people what you're doing. One of my local shops, it's a hardware shop. They have a big pause on their front door, which says, "We've just stopped trading. We're just pausing until we can get back to work." And that sort of says it all, really. So they're saying, we're coming back, we're just pausing. And I think it's worth just letting people know you're still there, and you will be back as soon as you can be.
Great. Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the questions for that section. So I'd just like to thank you for the overview, Stuart. There's definitely lots to consider there for adapting to the current climate. So now we have got a final question and answer session. If there's any further or last minute questions there that you would like to ask, a reminder that you can still submit questions via the question pane in the attendee control panel, or if you wish now, you can ask them directly to Stuart by raising by clicking the raising your hand button, which is again located on the control panel. So I'll just see if there's any further questions that we've got coming in. Okay, there's one here. It's Jack, and he's asking, do you feel that the changes businesses make now will give them an advantage in the new normal?
I think that depends. I think the fact is, what I've seen from my time spent working with businesses and talking to businesses is that certain products and certain sectors, people have made a change, and actually that change will be a long-term change because they've discovered a new market, or they've discovered new customers, and they will continue that because it obviously is profitable for them. They can generate more turnover. I think it's about being flexible, and I think it's about adapting. I think it's about being innovative, and I think as a business, I think you know, and I run a business. We all got a huge shock, I think, you know, 8 weeks ago, when we all sat there and thought, and I spoke to colleagues and peers, and it's like, where are we going to get a business from? It's all going to close down. And actually, you know, that was us going through that transition curve. Everyone goes through that, but then you have to sort of pick yourself up and think, well, actually, you know, we need to make money, we need to generate, we've got families to keep, we've got mortgages to pay. How are we going to do it? And I think by being flexible and actually, yeah, if there is a little bit of downtime that you've got, actually think about what you want to do in the future and your strategy. So answering the question, the changes you make now, yes, I think will be a huge advantage. If you can get clear in your head what your product and what your service is and who your customer is and how you can deliver that to the best of your ability and profitable and you know, keep your costs down, yes, it's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Great, lovely. Thanks very much, Stuart. There's no further questions come in, so I think that covers everything from the Q&A perspective today. I would just like to add that if you wish to access the support of our digital advisors to address specific needs or requirements to assist with adapting your business sales approach, then please do send a request through to events@bizlincolnshire.com, and we'll ensure this is followed up by the team. I think we've got a slide there in a moment. Let's go.
There should be a slide.
Oh, it got stuck.
It seems to be getting stuck. I don't know. It's maybe hot.
Okay. So just to repeat, the email address is events@bizlincolnshire.com. That's it. Great, lovely. Thank you, Stuart. I would now like to thank you, Stuart, for sharing your expertise with us today, and also thank our audience for attending today's webinar. Once you leave the session, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you could take a few moments to complete that and provide your feedback, including any suggestions of topics you wish to see delivered in future webinars. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. You can watch that back in your own leisure. Also, please do keep an eye out on our website for the latest updates during this challenging time. And if you've not already done so, subscribe to the weekly newsletter, and you can do that via the website at www.businesslincolnshire.com. Finally, we do still have some places available on our next two webinars. We have one on Thursday, the 21st of May, which is looking at creating a strategy and plan for managing through the crisis. And then the following Thursday, the 28th of May, we have cybersecurity for business in 2020. You can book these via the Business Lincolnshire website, as well as view a list of further webinars that are available to you, or which are located under the events menu on the Business Lincolnshire website. So I'd just like to say now, on behalf of Business Lincolnshire and our presenter Stuart today, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.